The early morning sunlight filtered through the tall windows of Westfield Conservatory of Music, casting long golden rectangles across the polished hardwood floors. The building was quiet at this hour, the practice room still and empty before the day's musical chaos began. The only sound was the soft squeak of Elena Novak's cleaning cart as she pushed it down the hallway. Elena was always the first to arrive, slipping through the side entrance with her keycard at precisely 5:30 a.m. each day. She preferred these quiet hours when she could work undisturbed, moving through the prestigious music school like a shadow, almost invisible. At 45, Elena's face held the weathered beauty of someone who had seen much of life. Her dark hair, streaked with silver, was always pulled back in a simple bun at the nape of her neck. Her movements were efficient but graceful as she worked. Her eyes, deep brown and somehow both present and far away, taking in everything while revealing nothing. Today she started in the East Wing practice rooms, methodically emptying trash bins, wiping down surfaces, and vacuuming the carpet squares designed to absorb sound. When she reached practice room 7, she paused. Inside sat a magnificent Steinway grand piano, its lid propped open, its black surface gleaming in the morning light. Elena stood in the doorway for a long moment, her cleaning cloth forgotten in her hand. Something about the sight of the piano made her chest tighten. She glanced down the empty hallway, then stepped inside the room, closing the door behind her. She didn't touch the piano. She never did. But she moved closer, breathing in the familiar scent of polished wood and metal strings. Her eyes traced the keys, 88 of them, a perfect universe of sound waiting silently. A door slammed somewhere in the building, breaking the spell. Elena quickly returned to her cart, her face composed once more into its usual expression of quiet concentration. By 7 o'clock, she had finished the practice rooms and moved on to the faculty offices, keeping her head down as the first teachers began to arrive. Most barely acknowledged her presence, hurrying past with coffee cups and sheet music, deep in conversation about upcoming recitals or difficult students. "Good morning, Elena," said a kind voice. Elena looked up, surprised. It was Professor Huang, the elderly composition teacher who always made a point to greet her by name. "Good morning, Professor," she replied softly, her words carrying the gentle lilt of her Ukrainian accent. "Another beautiful day," he said with a smile, glancing out the window at the clear blue sky. "Will you be leaving before the noon recital?" "One of my students is performing Bach, quite talented." Elena shook her head. "No, sir. I clean auditorium after lunch." "Ah, then perhaps you'll hear some of it. Music is good for the soul, yes?" With a small nod, he continued down the hallway, humming quietly to himself. Elena watched him go, a flicker of something. Longing, perhaps, crossing her face before she turned back to her work. By mid-morning, the conservatory was alive with sound. Music spilled from every room, scales and arpeggios, fragments of concertos, frustrated repetitions of difficult passages. Elena moved through this sea of sound like a diver, sometimes pausing outside a door when a particular piece caught her attention. Outside practice room 12, she stopped. Inside, a young woman was playing Chopin's Nocturne in E-flat major. The student was playing it well, technically proficient, but something was missing. Elena found herself shaking her head slightly. "Not feeling it, are you?" Elena jumped, nearly knocking over her bottle of glass cleaner. Professor Richardson stood behind her, his arms crossed, listening to the student as well. Tall and imposing, with steel gray hair and piercing blue eyes, he was known as the most demanding teacher at Westfield. I'm sorry," Elena stammered, quickly grabbing her cleaning supplies. "No need to apologize," he said, though his tone suggested otherwise. "Though perhaps eavesdropping on lessons isn't part of your job description." Elena's cheeks flushed. I clean windows. I go now." Richardson raised an eyebrow, then shrugged and entered the practice room. Through the door, Elena heard him interrupt the student mid-phrase. "Alexandra, you're playing notes, not music. Again, and this time, imagine you're telling a story." Elena hurried away, embarrassed. She should know better than to linger. She was here to clean, nothing more. The music wasn't for her. Not anymore. During her lunch break, Elena sat alone in the small break room reserved for maintenance staff, eating the simple sandwich she'd brought from home. Through the wall, she could hear the faint sounds of the noon recital in the auditorium. Professor Huang's student was playing Bach's Prelude in C major from the well-tempered clavier. The notes rippled like clear water, technically perfect, but Elena found herself thinking that the student was rushing slightly, not allowing the music to breathe. "You like classical music?" asked Jorge, the groundskeeper, as he heated his lunch in the microwave. Elena nodded, not elaborating. "My daughter takes piano lessons," Jorge continued, sitting down at the small table with his food. "Not at a fancy place like this, just with a neighbor lady. But she loves it. She's 10. Maybe someday she'll be good enough for a school like this, who knows? It's good music for children," Elena said with a small smile. "It helps them grow inside." Jorge nodded enthusiastically. "That's what I think too. My wife says it's expensive, but I tell her it's worth it." "You play any instruments, Elena?" The question hung in the air. For a moment something flickered behind Elena's eyes. A shadow, a memory. "Little bit. Long ago," she finally said, standing to throw away her sandwich wrapper. "Break is over. Back to work now." In the afternoon, Elena cleaned the faculty lounge, moving quietly around the edges of the room as several teachers gathered for coffee between lessons. She kept her eyes down, focusing on her work, but couldn't help overhearing their conversation. "The Rachmaninoff competition is in 6 weeks, and I don't have a single student ready for it," sighed Professor Richardson, stirring his coffee aggressively. Thomas came closest, but he's still butchering the cadenza in the third movement. "It's a beast of a piece," agreed Professor Chen, a younger teacher with a growing reputation for developing talented pianists. "Piano Concerto No. 3 is not for the faint of heart. I've half a mind to enter myself," joked Professor Walsh, the red-haired theory teacher. "Show these kids how it's done. You? Walsh, you can barely play chopsticks without looking at your hands." Richardson laughed. Elena moved to wipe down a table near the group, her movement so quiet and efficient that the teachers continued their conversation. "As if she weren't there, I had a student once in Beijing who mastered it in 3 months," said Professor Chen. "But she was exceptional, the kind of talent you see once in a teaching career." "Well, none of my current students seem to grasp the emotional complexity," Richardson complained. "They play the notes but miss the soul entirely. It's like they've never experienced a moment of true passion or despair in their privileged lives." Elena accidentally knocked a coffee cup with her cloth. It didn't fall, but the sound made the teachers glance her way. "Sorry," she murmured, quickly wiping up the small spill. "No harm done," said Professor Chen with a kind smile. Richardson checked his watch and stood up. "Back to the grind. I've got the Walker twins next. Double the lesson, double the headache." The teachers dispersed, leaving their cups and napkins scattered across the tables. Elena cleaned up after them, her face betraying nothing of her thoughts. As evening approached and the conservatory began to empty, Elena found herself drawn to the main recital hall. She was supposed to clean it, but first she just wanted to sit for a moment in the quiet space. The hall was beautiful. 300 plush red seats facing a stage where a magnificent concert grand piano stood, its lid closed now, waiting. Elena sat in the back row just for a minute, letting the silence wrap around her. From somewhere down the hall she could hear a violin student packing up, the case snapping shut, footsteps fading away. Soon the building would be empty except for the night security guard, who usually stayed in the front office watching sports on his phone. When she was certain she was alone, Elena made her way to the stage. She set down her cleaning supplies and approached the piano. In the dim light of the empty hall, it seemed to be waiting for her. Her fingers, strong from years of scrubbing floors and cleaning windows, hovered over the keys. She didn't touch them, not yet, but she could feel the pull like gravity, like coming home. Tomorrow would be another day of invisible work, of being the woman nobody really saw. But for now, in this moment of solitude, Elena Novak stood before the piano, a secret hidden in plain sight among the polished halls of Westfield Conservatory. For 3 weeks, Elena had managed to keep her secret. 3 weeks of mopping floors while master classes took place, of dusting piano lids while prodigies practiced, of existing in a world of music without being part of it. But secrets have a way of slipping out, like notes escaping through an open window. It happened on a Tuesday evening in late October. Rain pattered against the tall windows of the conservatory, and most of the faculty had left early to beat the worsening weather. Elena worked methodically through her end-of-day cleaning routine, checking off each room on her list. The building felt especially empty tonight, the hallways echoing with nothing but the soft squeak of her cartwheels and the distant drumming of rain. When she reached the recital hall, Elena found it dark except for a single light above the stage. The grand piano sat there, its lid propped open, forgotten by whoever had used it last. She should just clean quickly and move on. That was the safe choice, the smart choice. Instead, Elena set down her supplies and walked slowly toward the stage. 3 weeks of restraint crumbled as she approached the piano. This wasn't the first time she'd been tempted. Each day the pull grew stronger, like hunger, like thirst, like needing to breathe after holding your breath too long. She sat down on the bench, her work uniform, gray pants and a blue button-up shirt with maintenance embroidered on the pocket, out of place against the glossy black instrument. Her hands, rough from years of cleaning chemicals, hovered above the keys. Just once, she told herself. Just for a minute when no one could hear. Elena closed her eyes and began to play. She started with something simple, a Bach prelude she'd learned as a child. Her fingers were stiff at first, uncertain, like someone speaking a language they haven't used in years. But muscle memory is a powerful thing. Soon the notes flowed more easily, her hands remembering what her mind had tried to forget. The prelude led into a Chopin nocturne, and then, almost without conscious thought, her fingers found the opening notes of Rachmaninoff's Piano Concerto No. 3, the very piece Professor Richardson had been complaining about with his students. As she played, Elena's face transformed. The careful mask of the invisible cleaning woman fell away, replaced by something luminous and alive. Her body swayed with the music, her fingers drawing out melodies and harmonies that filled the empty hall. In this moment, she wasn't Elena the janitor anymore. She was someone else entirely, someone she'd left behind long ago. She didn't hear the door at the back of the hall open, didn't notice the figure standing in the shadows listening. Professor Chen had returned to retrieve a forgotten folder of sheet music. He'd expected to find the building nearly empty, perhaps with just the night guard making his rounds. Instead, he heard music, not the hesitant practicing of a student, but something else entirely. Something remarkable. He stood motionless, afraid that any movement might break the spell. The woman at the piano, the cleaning woman, he realized with shock, was playing one of the most difficult pieces in the piano repertoire with extraordinary skill. Her technique was impeccable, but it was more than that. She played with the depth of someone who had lived inside the music, who understood its darkness and its light. When she reached the cadenza in the first movement, the very section that had been giving Richardson's students such trouble, Chen found himself holding his breath. Her fingers flew across the keys, building the complex passage to its thundering climax. It wasn't just technically perfect. It was emotionally devastating. The last notes hung in the air, fading slowly into silence. Elena sat still for a moment, her hands resting in her lap. Her head bowed, then she heard the applause. A single person clapping slowly from the back of the hall. Elena jumped up from the bench, her face draining of color. "I'm sorry, I shouldn't have," she stammered, her accent thickening with distress. Professor Chen walked down the center aisle toward the stage, still clapping. "That was extraordinary," he said, his voice quiet with awe. "Truly extraordinary." Elena grabbed her cleaning cart. "Please, I go now. I finish other rooms." "Wait," Chen said, reaching the edge of the stage. "Please don't go." "Who are you?" "I mean, really." Elena shook her head, not meeting his eyes. "I am nobody." "Just cleaning lady." "No cleaning lady plays Rachmaninoff like that," Chen said gently. "That was world-class playing. You've had serious training." Elena's hands twisted together nervously. It was long time ago. "Different life. Would you tell me about it, please?" She looked at him then, really looked, measuring something in his face. Whatever she saw there made her shoulders slump slightly, as if in defeat. "I studied. Kiev Conservatory. Then Moscow, before everything changed." Her words were clipped, careful. "You were a concert pianist?" Chen asked, though it wasn't really a question. He knew the answer. A small, sad smile touched Elena's lips. "Once, not now. But why are you—" Chen gestured around at the cleaning supplies. "New country. New start. Music is painful now." Her eyes drifted back to the piano, a look of such longing on her face that Chen felt like he was intruding on something deeply private. "I understand," he said, though he wasn't sure he did. What could make someone with that level of talent turn away from music completely? Your secret is safe with me if that's what you want. Relief washed over Elena's face. Thank you. Please don't tell others. Chen nodded, but a plan was already forming in his mind. Not to expose her exactly, but, well, talent like hers shouldn't be hidden away. It wouldn't be right. The next morning, Chen arrived early at the conservatory, hoping to catch Elena before the day began. He found her in the main lobby polishing the glass doors. Good morning, he said cheerfully. Elena nodded, her face carefully blank. Good morning, Professor. I've been thinking about yesterday, he began. Please, she interrupted, forget what you heard. It was a mistake. A mistake? Chen raised his eyebrows. It was brilliant. And I respect your privacy, truly. But I have a proposition for you. Elena looked wary. What proposition? I teach an advanced master class on Thursday afternoons. Some of our most talented students attend. Would you consider coming in to listen? Not to play, he added quickly, seeing her expression. Just to listen. As my guest. Elena hesitated. I work Thursdays. I checked with maintenance. Your shift ends at 3. My class is at 4. She was silent for a long moment, considering. Then, almost imperceptibly, she nodded. Just to listen, Chen beamed. Wonderful. Room 107 this Thursday at 4. As he walked away, he felt a twinge of guilt. He hadn't exactly lied to Elena. She would be welcome to listen. But he had other plans as well. Plans he'd stayed up half the night discussing with Professor Richardson over the phone. The news spread quickly among the faculty. Not about Elena's playing, which Chen kept to himself, but about the mysterious guest who would be attending Thursday's masterclass. Chen was well known for bringing in distinguished visitors, and speculation ran high about who it might be this time. I heard it's someone from the National Symphony, Professor Walsh told Richardson as they passed in the hallway. Chen told me it's a surprise, Richardson replied with a knowing smile. But it should be quite educational for the students. Elena noticed the buzz of excitement among the teachers but thought nothing of it. She went about her work as usual, though she found herself listening more openly to the music around her. Sometimes, when she cleaned the practice rooms, she would pause to adjust a student's sheet music that had been put away incorrectly, or straighten a crooked metronome. On Thursday afternoon, Elena left work on time for once. She went home to the small apartment she rented near the bus line, showered quickly and changed out of her work clothes. She stood before her closet, suddenly uncertain. What did one wear to a master class when not working? It had been so long since she'd attended anything musical as a guest. She finally settled on a simple navy blue dress, one of the few nice items she owned, and a pair of low heels. She pulled her hair back neatly, applied a touch of lipstick, and looked at herself in the mirror. For a moment, she barely recognized the woman staring back at her. When Elena arrived back at the conservatory, she felt strange entering through the front doors instead of the staff entrance. The security guard, who usually just nodded as she arrived for her early morning shift, did a double take. Evening, Elena. What brings you back? I am guest. For music class, she said, feeling awkward. He smiled. Well, enjoy yourself. Elena made her way to room 107, her heart beating faster with each step. Outside the door, she paused, suddenly overwhelmed by doubt. What was she doing here? This wasn't her world anymore. She should turn around now, go home, forget this foolishness. But before she could leave, the door opened and Professor Chen stood there, smiling broadly. Elena, you came, please come in. We're just about to begin. Taking a deep breath, Elena stepped into the room, unaware that she was walking into a carefully laid trap. One designed with the best of intentions, but a trap nonetheless. Room 107 fell silent as Elena entered. 8 students sat in a semicircle facing a grand piano, their curious gazes following her as Professor Chen led her to a chair near the back. She recognized a few of them. The tall boy with glasses who always left sheet music scattered around practice room 3, the serious-looking girl with the long braid who stayed late most evenings. They looked at her with confusion, clearly wondering why the cleaning woman was joining their elite master class. Good afternoon, everyone, Professor Chen said, clapping his hands together. Before we begin, I'd like to introduce our special guest. He gestured toward Elena, who tried to make herself smaller in her chair. This is Ms. Elena Novak. Elena nodded stiffly, uncomfortable with the attention. This was a mistake. She shouldn't have come. Now, Chen continued, turning to the students. Today we're continuing our work on the Rachmaninoff Piano Concerto No. 3. Anton, I believe you were going to start us off with the first movement. The tall boy with glasses stood, adjusting his collar nervously. Yes, Professor. Though I'm still having trouble with the cadenza. Do your best, Chen encouraged. Remember what we discussed about the emotional arc of the piece. Anton sat at the piano and began to play. He was good, technically proficient, his fingers moving confidently across the keys. But something was missing. Elena could feel it like an itch she couldn't scratch. The notes were there, but the music wasn't fully alive. She watched his hands, noticing how he rushed through certain passages, not giving the phrases room to breathe. When he reached the cadenza, his tempo became uneven, the difficult run stumbling slightly. Elena found herself leaning forward, her hands unconsciously moving in her lap, playing along with phantom keys. For a moment she forgot where she was, lost in the music and the memory of how those passages should feel under her fingers. When Anton finished, there was polite applause. Professor Chen offered some constructive feedback about phrasing and dynamics, then asked if anyone else had comments. The door at the back of the room opened and Professor Richardson walked in, followed by Professor Walsh and 3 other faculty members Elena recognized from around the conservatory. Sorry we're late, Richardson said, not sounding sorry at all. Please continue. Chen nodded, a slight smile playing at the corners of his mouth. Anton was just finishing the first movement of the Rachmaninoff. Lily, would you like to try the second movement? The serious girl with the long braid took her place at the piano. Her playing was more nuanced than Anton's, with a better sense of the music's emotional landscape. But when she reached a particularly delicate passage, her interpretation became overly cautious, losing the passion that made Rachmaninoff's music so powerful. Again, Elena found herself swept up in the music, her body swaying slightly, her fingers twitching with the urge to show how those notes could sing. After Lily finished, Chen offered his critique, then turned to the gathering of professors at the back of the room. Professor Richardson, since the Rachmaninoff is your specialty, perhaps you'd like to offer some insights. Richardson stepped forward, his tall frame imposing as he addressed the students. Both performances showed technical competence, he said, his voice clipped. But neither of you has truly captured the soul of this piece. Rachmaninoff wrote this concerto as an expression of profound emotion, longing, struggle, triumph. It's not enough to play the notes. You must live them. He paced in front of the students, warming to his subject. This concerto is considered one of the most difficult in the standard repertoire. Rachmaninoff himself was a pianist with enormous hands and extraordinary technique. He wrote this piece to showcase his own abilities with little concern for whether others could play it. He stopped, surveying the room. Perhaps it's simply too ambitious for students at your level. Professor Chen cleared his throat. I wonder if anyone else might have thoughts on the piece. Sometimes a fresh perspective can be illuminating. His eyes drifted meaningfully toward Elena. Elena stiffened, suddenly understanding why she had been invited. This wasn't about listening at all. Actually, Richardson said, following Chen's gaze, I notice we have a guest today. Ms. Novak, isn't it? Our custodial staff member. Elena nodded mutely, her heart hammering in her chest. Tell me, Ms. Novak, Richardson continued, his tone somewhere between curious and condescending. Do you enjoy classical music? Yes, Elena managed, her accent thickening with nervousness. Is beautiful music. And this Rachmaninoff piece we're working on, what do you think of it? The room was completely silent now, all eyes on Elena. She swallowed hard. It's a very difficult piece, she said carefully, but very beautiful. Richardson's eyebrows rose slightly. Indeed, very difficult. These are some of our most advanced students, and even they struggle with it. He glanced at the piano, then back at Elena. Perhaps you'd like to try? A few students exchanged puzzled looks. Was he mocking her? No, I just listened today, Elena said, gripping her purse tightly. Oh, come now, Richardson insisted, gesturing toward the piano. No need to be shy. Just a few notes to show these students that everyone can enjoy music, regardless of their level of education or training. Chen stepped forward, looking uncomfortable. Professor Richardson, I don't think... It's a simple invitation, Richardson interrupted. Unless, of course, there's a reason Ms. Novak doesn't want to play for us. The challenge hung in the air. Elena looked from Richardson to Chen, feeling trapped. Chen's expression was apologetic but expectant. This had been the plan all along. Slowly, Elena stood up. The room seemed to hold its breath as she walked to the piano, her low heels clicking softly on the hardwood floor. She sat down on the bench, adjusting it slightly, her hands resting in her lap for a moment. Several students were hiding smiles behind their hands. They thought this was a joke, the cleaning lady attempting a piece that even they found challenging. Richardson stood with his arms crossed, waiting. Elena closed her eyes briefly, gathering herself. Then she placed her hands on the keys. She began quietly, the opening notes of the concerto flowing under her fingers with a delicacy that immediately silenced any whispers. The simple, almost melancholy theme unfolded with such natural grace that it seemed to be creating itself. As the piece progressed, Elena's body language transformed. Her spine straightened, her shoulders relaxed, her head lifting with the rising melody. Her hands, so recently occupied with mops and cleaning rags, now moved across the keyboard with astonishing precision and fluidity. When she reached the section where Anton had struggled, she navigated it with ease, building the tension masterfully. And then came the cadenza, that mountain of notes that had defeated so many students. Under Elena's fingers, it became a wild, passionate confession, a storm of emotion that left everyone in the room breathless. Richardson's smug expression had vanished, replaced by utter disbelief. Professor Walsh's mouth hung open slightly. The students sat frozen, their faces a mixture of shock, confusion, and awe. Chen was the only one smiling, watching with quiet satisfaction as his plan unfolded. Elena was lost now, completely absorbed in the music. She had tried so hard to leave this part of herself behind, but here it was again, the connection between her soul and the instrument, the ability to speak through her fingers what she could never say in words. The first movement ended with a flourish, the final notes hanging in the stunned silence of the room. For a moment no one moved or spoke. Then Anton, the tall boy with glasses, began to clap. The others joined in, the applause swelling until it filled the room. Elena's hands fell to her lap. She looked up, suddenly aware of what she had done, of the secret she had revealed. Her cheeks flushed with embarrassment. Richardson stepped forward, his face unreadable. "Who are you?" he asked quietly. Before Elena could answer, Professor Chen intervened. "Perhaps we should continue this conversation privately," he suggested, glancing meaningfully at the wide-eyed students. Richardson nodded slowly. "Class dismissed," he said, not taking his eyes off Elena. "We'll resume tomorrow." The students gathered their things, whispering excitedly among themselves. As they filed out, many of them glanced back at Elena with newfound respect and curiosity. When the room was empty except for the professors and Elena, Richardson pulled up a chair directly in front of the piano bench. "Now," he said, leaning forward, "I'm going to ask you again. Who are you, really? And where did you learn to play like that?" Elena looked down at her hands, workers' hands now with short nails and dry skin from cleaning chemicals. But today they had remembered their old skill, had come alive again under the spell of Rachmaninoff's music. She took a deep breath. The time for hiding was over. The professors had moved Elena to the faculty lounge, a comfortable room with worn leather chairs and shelves lined with music books. Tea had been ordered, and Elena sat with a steaming cup, warming her hands, feeling strangely disconnected from reality. After years of invisibility, she was now the center of attention, with 5 faculty members hanging on her every word. "I was Elena Novikova," she began softly, her accent more pronounced now that she wasn't trying to hide it. "Not Novak. I changed name made simpler when I came to America." "Elena Novikova," Professor Richardson repeated, his brow furrowed. "Why does that sound familiar?" Professor Chen pulled out his phone and typed quickly. After a moment, his eyes widened. "My God," he breathed, turning the screen to show the others. "Elena Novikova, winner of the International Tchaikovsky competition 20 years ago. Principal soloist with the Kyiv Philharmonic, guest performer with the Moscow Symphony, the Berlin Philharmonic." He looked up at Elena with new understanding. "You weren't just a pianist. You were a star." Elena winced at the word. "Was long time ago," she said, staring into her tea. "Different life, but why?" Professor Walsh asked, leaning forward in her chair. "Why would someone with your talent?" She gestured vaguely. struggling to find a delicate way to ask why a world-class pianist was now scrubbing toilets at a music school. Elena took a sip of tea, gathering her thoughts. She rarely spoke about her past, had spent years trying to bury it, but these people had heard her play. In a way, they already knew her most private self. "War changes everything," she said simply. "When conflict started in my region, I was touring in Europe. My husband Nikolai was professor of composition at Kiev Conservatory. He stayed to help students evacuate." Her voice caught slightly. "Building was hit during attack. 34 people died. Nikolai was one." The room fell silent. Professor Walsh covered her mouth with her hand. "I'm so sorry," Professor Chen said quietly. Elena nodded, accepting the condolence. "After I could not play. Music was our life together. His compositions, my performances. To touch piano was to feel loss all over again. So I stopped. Came to America to start new life, simple life." "But to give up such a gift," Richardson said, shaking his head in disbelief. "Surely after some time—" "Some wounds do not heal with time," Elena replied, a hint of steel entering her voice. "They just become part of who you are." Richardson had the grace to look abashed. "Of course. I didn't mean to suggest. How long have you been in the States?" Professor Chen asked, steering the conversation to safer ground. 3 years, Elena answered. "First job was cleaning hotel in Chicago. Then hospital. Then here." A ghost of a smile touched her lips. "I choose music school on purpose. Wanted to be near music even if I could not play." "And yet you played today," Chen observed gently. "Beautifully." Elena was quiet for a moment. "Yes," she finally admitted. "I played, and how did it feel?" he pressed. Elena's eyes grew distant, remembering. "Like opening door to room I kept locked for many years. Scary. But also—" She searched for the word. "Familiar. Like coming home after long journey?" Professor Richardson set down his cup with sudden decision. "Ms. Novikova, I owe you an apology. My behavior in the classroom was inexcusable. I had no idea of your circumstances, but that's no excuse for putting you on the spot as I did." Elena waved away his apology. "You did not know. Nevertheless," he insisted, "it was thoughtless and unkind, and I am deeply sorry." Elena nodded, accepting his words. "But," Richardson continued, his face brightening, "I'm not at all sorry to have heard you play. It was revelatory. The very essence of what I've been trying to teach my students about Rachmaninoff." "Indeed," agreed Professor Huang, the elderly composition teacher who had been listening quietly until now. "You understand his music from the inside. It's rare to hear such authentic interpretation, even from professional recording artists." Elena looked down, uncomfortable with the praise. "Ms. Novikova," Chen said carefully, "would you consider teaching here?" Elena's head snapped up in surprise. "Teaching? Me?" "We could start with private lessons," Chen continued. "Many students would benefit enormously from your knowledge and experience. We could work around your current schedule, of course." "I'm not—" Elena hesitated. "I'm not teacher." "You absolutely are," Richardson countered. "Anyone who plays like you do has something to teach. And frankly, my students need you far more than our floors do. No offense to our maintenance department." A small laugh escaped Elena, surprising her. When was the last time she had laughed? "Think about it," Chen suggested. "No pressure, but the offer is there." The conversation drifted to other topics. Elena's training in Kiev, her favorite composers, her performances in various concert halls around the world. As she spoke, Elena felt something shifting inside her, like ice breaking up on a river after a long winter. Words came more easily, her hands gesturing as she described a particularly memorable performance of Beethoven's Emperor Concerto in Vienna. By the time they finished their tea, darkness had fallen outside the windows. Professor Walsh checked her watch and exclaimed at the late hour. "We should let you go home, Ms. Novikova," Chen said, standing. "It's been quite a day." The others gathered their things, still casting wondering glances at Elena, as if they couldn't quite believe the treasure that had been hiding in plain sight among them. "May I walk you out?" Professor Huang asked Elena kindly. She nodded, gathering her purse. As they made their way through the now empty conservatory, their footsteps echoing in the darkened hallways, Huang spoke quietly. "I lost my wife 6 years ago," he said. "Cancer. For a year after, I could not compose a single note. Music had been our shared language for 43 years. Without her to hear it, what was the point? Elena glanced at him, surprised by this confidence. But then, he continued, my granddaughter was born, and one day holding this tiny new person, a melody came to me. Just a simple lullaby, but it was the first time music felt like a comfort rather than a wound. He stopped walking and turned to face Elena. I'm not saying your path should be the same as mine. Each grief is unique, as is each healing. But music has its own healing power. Sometimes it can rebuild what was broken. They reached the front doors and Huang held one open for her. Just something to consider, he said with a gentle smile. Elena stepped out into the cool night air, her mind swirling with the events of the day. As she walked to the bus stop, she found herself humming, a habit she had abandoned years ago. It was the opening theme of the Rachmaninoff, following her home like a stray cat, refusing to be left behind. The next morning, Elena arrived at work at her usual time, 5:30 a.m., but something was different. As she pushed her cart down the familiar hallways, she found herself really listening to the silence of the building, hearing the potential music in it, like an orchestra in the moments before the conductor raises the baton. When she reached the recital hall, she paused. Instead of beginning her cleaning routine, she walked to the stage and sat at the piano. Her fingers hovered over the keys for a long moment, then slowly she began to play. Not Rachmaninoff this time, but a simple Bach prelude, the first piece she had learned as a child. The notes filled the empty hall, clear and true in the morning light. Elena closed her eyes, letting the music wash over her. Each note was both an ending and a beginning, a goodbye and a hello. She didn't hear the door open at the back of the hall. Didn't see Anton, the tall student with glasses, stop in his tracks, his early morning practice forgotten as he listened in wonder to the cleaning lady who played like an angel. And she certainly didn't see him pull out his phone to record the moment, his hands shaking with excitement as he captured what would soon become the most viewed classical music video of the year. By noon, the video had spread through the entire conservatory. Students huddled around phones in the cafeteria, watching with wide eyes as Elena played Bach with a grace and depth that made the simple piece sound new again. Practice rooms fell silent as everyone gathered to see the morning's miracle. The cleaning lady transformed into a world-class pianist before their eyes. Elena knew nothing of this as she went about her work, methodically cleaning the second-floor classrooms. She noticed the strange looks she received, the whispers that followed her down the hallway but attributed them to yesterday's performance in the masterclass. News traveled fast in a small community like the conservatory. It wasn't until her lunch break that she discovered the truth. Jorge, the groundskeeper, sat down across from her in the break room, his face split by an enormous grin. "Elena, you're famous," he announced, holding out his phone. "Look, you're all over the internet." Elena stared at the screen in horror. There she was, in her gray work pants and blue maintenance shirt, playing the piano in the dim light of early morning. The video had already accumulated thousands of views, with comments flooding in from around the world. "How," she whispered, her hand trembling as she took the phone. "Some student recorded you this morning," Jorge explained. "He posted it online and it just exploded. People are saying you're some kind of lost classical music star or something. Is that true?" Before Elena could respond, the break room door burst open. Diane from Human Resources stood there, slightly out of breath. "Elena, thank goodness. Dean Williams wants to see you in his office right away." Elena handed the phone back to Jorge, her face pale. "Am I in trouble?" Diane laughed. "Trouble? No, honey. But there's a line of reporters outside the building asking for you. The dean's phone hasn't stopped ringing all morning. We need to figure out how to handle this." The dean's office was crowded with people. Professor Chen, Professor Richardson, the head of the music department, and a woman Elena didn't recognize who was introduced as the conservatory's public relations director. Dean Williams, a tall man with silver hair who Elena had only seen from a distance at official school functions, rose to greet her. "Ms. Novikova," he said warmly, extending his hand. "Or do you prefer Novak?" "Novak is fine," Elena said quietly, feeling overwhelmed by the attention. "Please sit down," the dean offered, gesturing to an empty chair. "I understand this has been quite a whirlwind for you." Elena sat stiffly, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. "I did not know about video," she said. "I did not give permission." We understand, Professor Chen assured her. The student who recorded it, Anton, has been spoken to about privacy concerns, but the video is out there now, and people are responding to your playing in an extraordinary way. The PR director nodded eagerly. We've already received calls from the New York Times, Classical FM, and 3 major record labels. Everyone wants to know the story behind the cleaning lady Virtuoso. That's what they're calling you online. Elena winced at the nickname. I don't want attention, she said firmly. I just want to do my job. Of course, Dean Williams said soothingly, and no one here will pressure you to do anything you're not comfortable with, but he exchanged glances with the others. We would be remiss if we didn't point out that this could be an incredible opportunity for you and for the conservatory. Elena frowned. What kind of opportunity? We'd like to offer you a teaching position, the dean said. As a distinguished artist in residence, you would have your own studio, select your own students, complete artistic freedom. Elena blinked in surprise. But I am not teacher. I am cleaner. You are a world-class pianist who happens to be working as a cleaner, Richardson corrected gently. There's a difference. Elena looked down at her hands, calloused from years of manual labor. Could they really belong to a pianist again? To a teacher? I need time to think, she finally said. Of course, the dean agreed. Take all the time you need. In the meantime, we can help manage the media attention if you'd like. You don't have to face all this alone. Elena nodded gratefully. Thank you. As she left the office, Elena felt as if she were walking through a dream. The familiar hallways of the conservatory seemed different somehow, as if she were seeing them through new eyes. Not as the woman who cleaned them, but as someone who might belong here in a different way. She was so lost in thought that she almost collided with Anton, who was waiting anxiously outside the dean's office. Ms. Novak, he exclaimed. I've been waiting to talk to you. I wanted to apologize for recording you without permission. I never meant for it to go viral like this. I just thought, your playing was so beautiful and I wanted to show my friends. Elena studied the young man's face, seeing genuine remorse there. Is okay, she said after a moment. What's done is done. Relief washed over Anton's features. Really, you're not angry? Elena sighed. Life is too short for anger. I learned this the hard way. Anton nodded, then hesitated. Ms. Novak, or Ms. Novakova, I guess. Could I ask you something? About the Rachmaninoff? For a moment, Elena was tempted to refuse, to retreat back into the safety of invisibility, but something stopped her. Perhaps the earnest look in the boy's eyes, or perhaps something shifting within herself. What do you want to know? She asked. The cadenza, Anton said eagerly. I've been struggling with it for months. The way you played it yesterday, it was like you were telling a story. Could you show me how? Elena felt a flutter of something unfamiliar. Pride, perhaps, or the simple pleasure of being asked for her knowledge. Not now, she said. But maybe tomorrow, after my shift. Anton's face lit up. Really? That would be amazing. Thank you. As he hurried off, Elena continued her walk through the conservatory, her mind whirling with possibilities she hadn't allowed herself to consider in years. 2 weeks later, Elena stood backstage at the conservatory's main concert hall, her heart racing. The benefit concert had been the dean's idea, a chance to raise scholarship funds while also introducing Elena to the community in her new role as artist in residence. She had agreed on one condition, that she could play a piece composed by her late husband, Nikolai. The dean had readily agreed, and now the program note explained the significance of the composition, a piano sonata Nikolai had written for Elena on their 10th wedding anniversary, never before performed in public. Elena smoothed the fabric of her simple black dress, fighting the urge to flee. It had been so long since she had performed for an audience. What if she failed? What if the music brought too much pain? A soft knock on the door interrupted her thoughts. Professor Huang entered, his kind face creased with concern. Nervous? He asked. Elena nodded, unable to speak. Huang took her hands in his. I want to tell you something. After you played in the master class, I went home and found an old recording. You performing Chopin's ballads in Moscow 22 years ago. I was there, did you know? A visiting professor at the time. I never forgot that concert. Elena stared at him in surprise. You were there? He nodded. And I remember thinking that I had never heard Chopin played with such honesty. Not perfection, though your technique was impeccable, but truth. That's the rarest gift a musician can have. He squeezed her hands gently. You still have it, Elena. I heard it when you played Bach that morning. Some gifts cannot be lost, only temporarily set aside. The stage manager appeared at the door. 5 minutes, Ms. Novikova. Huang released her hands with a reassuring smile. Your husband's music deserves to be heard, and you deserve to be the one who gives it life. As he left, Elena closed her eyes, centering herself. She thought of Nikolai, of the joy they had shared through music, of the pain that had silenced her for so long. She thought of the students she had begun working with, their eager faces as they absorbed her guidance. She thought of the cleaning cart she had pushed through these halls, and how it had been, in its way, a path back to herself. When the stage manager returned to lead her to the piano, Elena was ready. She walked onto the stage with her head high, acknowledging the warm applause with a slight bow. The lights were bright, the audience a blur of faces. But as she sat at the piano, adjusting the bench just so, a calm certainty settled over her. This was where she belonged. Not hidden away, not buried in grief, but here, hands poised over the keys, ready to speak the language of music again. Elena began to play her husband's composition, a piece that moved from darkness to light, from loss to hope. As the music filled the hall, she felt Nikolai's presence in every note, not as a wound, but as a gift. Their love, transformed into sound, would not die as long as she had the courage to play. In the front row, Professor Chen watched with tears in his eyes, remembering the cleaning woman he had discovered playing Rachmaninoff in an empty hall. Beside him, Anton and the other students leaned forward in their seats, witnessing the rebirth of an artist who was now their teacher. And in the back of the hall, Jorge the groundskeeper sat with his 10-year-old daughter, who watched Elena with wonder in her eyes, seeing for the first time what might be possible in a life dedicated to music. As the final notes of Nikolai's sonata faded away, Elena kept her hands on the keys for a moment longer, savoring the silence that follows true music, a silence full of echoes and possibilities. Then she rose to accept the standing ovation, her heart full, her journey come full circle. The cleaning lady had come home.